Nicole.
Hi, hello.
My name is Richmond, and then welcome to Passion and Pursue. It's really great to have you on board to talk about what you do, why you do it, and what you're looking forward to impact on young people in general. So I'd like you to mention your name and then introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So, hi, everyone. I am Nicole. I'm currently a political worker, internationally a diplomat trainee. So, I'm involved in organizations like United Nations, World Economic Forum, Global Shapers Community, a community for young people to get together, young professionals to get together to work on causes that are municipal and grassroots, as well as NATO Canada, as Senior Vice President of Relations. So, we work with United Nations Association of Canada and international organizations, civil societies working on the cause of defense. I'm also a student entrepreneur working on 2 startups, as well as a student at University of Toronto, majoring in political science with a minor in digital humanities.
That's impressive. When I got to know you, I didn't even think you were still in school. I thought you were already doing diplomatic stuff.
Yeah.
And then getting to know that you're a student and doing what you are doing, I was actually more impressed. So why did you get into this space of diplomacy and politics and international relations?
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that you're surprised that I'm still in school. And I'm actually surprised there are a lot of Canadian young students, like 15 years old, 16 years old. You can see them out there canvassing. There's a federal election happening in Canada in April 28th. And you can see high school students, actually taking initiatives, starting organizations. And I embody very similar philosophy when I was in high school. I came from Taiwan. I came to Canada 2 years ago to pursue my undergraduate degree. When I was in Taiwan, we are in very interesting geopolitical situation with China. So I was able to work on independent journalism with one of my colleagues on uplifting journalists in censored countries and territories and give them a platform to able to report what is going on in their country. We're able to connect with one of the cases that we work on with Taiwan Says with Ukraine. One of the organization we did fundraising, we support Ukrainian business in Taiwan. And that was the first step. I got to know the Indo-Pacific security and peace and how we are and how we represent can interconnected with the world and what is Canada's role in international society. So after I came to Canada and I started getting involved in partisan politics to get to know about policies, how housing affordability, and all kinds of civic duty that make every single of our vote matters. We want to vote for great leadership, and there is a lot of apathy in Canada when it comes to politics because it's such a huge space and people are so used to democracy. People are used to this comfortness of, peace and being able to live in great condition. Coming from Taiwan, I want to bring that kind of awareness in Canada as well as representing Canada in the global stage. So that's how I start off my career. And then, you get involved more and you know more about the community, the issue that matters to the people here. And I'm just happy to, bring up and strike the balance between 2 identities and bring it up to the global stage.
That's impressive. So for a student and a diplomat trainee, what has been the greatest moment in your start? What has been the greatest moment in all of these things that you've been doing?
Yes, absolutely. I think a lot of people would say, for example, like, speaking at a UN conference or, being able to manage like a team of 100. But I think to me, the kind of point, that turning point that's, really stimulate the growth mindset in me is always staying critical and stay authentic and genuine. I think people oftentimes get lost in the social impact circle because this is such a huge community with opportunities and you're able to meet people. You have all these opportunities to meet with high profile, politicians. You're able to, speak up with the issues that you want. People sometimes get lost in these places, especially me as a Taiwanese, and we are not represented in a lot of international organizations. And I think it's knowing that how and what we represent will reinforce the current power structure, as well as knowing that what we represent speaks for this kind of power dynamics and what we represent our community and how our community can work with another identity that we represent. So say, for example, in one of the UN conference that I attended last year, it was the United Nations Inclusive Youth Forum 2024. And, as a Taiwanese, I understand that I have the privilege also representing Canada, Canadian Council of Young Feminists for Senator Mary Lou, have all these connections and able to enter the United States without visa. Meanwhile, I received a lot of messages from students from Nepal, from Haiti, because whether it's their diplomatic situation with the United States is not as smooth and successful as Taiwan relationship with these countries, they are not even able to represent their own country in these global stage. So understanding that although this is a huge space to speak out, there's a lot of spotlights and opportunities, but also knowing that these industry that we represent also reinforce an existing power structure. There's a great documentary called Poverty Inc. And it also mentioned how the social impact circles, such as international aid and all these nonprofit organizations you see around these places, especially sponsored by the United States, spreading out in post-conflict societies. We always say a success of a nonprofit organization is when a nonprofit organization disappears, because that's when actual success is defined. But these social impact circles want to kind of stay in the country, and a lot of the businesses in these countries are not able to thrive and grow themselves because they're so used to the free international aid and free stuff. And an example like this also kind of overturns and makes me reevaluate what exactly are we impacting and what are the issues and how can we personally, as a young woman, as a BIPOC community, as an Asian, which is considered a minority here in North America, can represent my community, speak up for this issue, or as Taiwanese who weren't being previously able to represent international organizations because of our political stances.
I'd like you to tell me what are the most challenging moments that you encountered in this growth process, and then the part that really tested you and could potentially made you stop what you're doing.
Absolutely. I think we're also living in the world of uncertainty. We're seeing like inflation or trade war between the US and Canada and around the world. And we're just living in a very uncertain, anything could happen, but everything could be possible, but everything could be impossible as well. And I think especially in this world of misinformation, disinformations, and extreme ideology, I think it's very easy to fall into the rabbit hole of temptations and not being able to stand by what we believe, especially in politics. I feel like a lot of people that I talk to have this very interesting imagination of what the political sector looks like, how international policy looks like. And as I said previously, that the social impact circle faced a huge challenge in kind of the performative action, youth washing, and the general apathy and doomerism in the circle. So I think it's the kind of the uncertainty that surrounds this industry, and this kind of uncertainty is also maximized into other industries, such as like general unemployment problems that a lot of university students, great university students who work on their projects in their university, ends up not getting a job and not able to be financially stable. And I always say you have to liberate yourself before you're able to liberate others.
Sure.
So I think one of the biggest idea that, and the philosophy that I embody right now is something called Stoicism. So this idea of being able to catch what you can and being to let go what you cannot control, and being able to kind of hold on to the principles, the idea that that I hold on to, that I believe in, and always keep it authentic, always keep it real. So that's the philosophy that I always believe in. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, with all of this, was it a time where you felt you doubted yourself in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, being a Taiwanese, and I'm very involved here in NATO, Canada, and the United Nations, and there's always some point that something just kicking like, oh, you're not Canadian citizen, and you don't belong here, especially the current immigration crisis. I think there's a lot of narratives surrounding like extremism and how immigration takes away the jobs, and just general hate towards minorities and racism towards these communities, especially in these times. They're so difficult for a lot of these communities. So, I think sometimes these kind of narratives like bring me back to where I supposed to come from. So I think that the way I tackle it is, I think I'm also using my own, whether as a diplomat, whether as an entrepreneur, I was able to bring in different perspective as a Taiwanese to place like Canada or international stage. One of the speech that I mentioned in the UN COSAC Youth Forum in 2024 and the recent CSO 63, the Social Development Forum happening in February, I also speak on the idea of me from Taiwan and able to incorporate the Canadian perspectives on tackling global issues and redefining Canadians' role in whether it's peace, security, rule-based international legal order, rule of law, in post-conflict societies. And these are all not from a Canadian perspective, but also just standing in as I want to always remember my roots as Taiwanese, but also, bring that voice and incorporate with the Canadian perspective in the global stage.
Good. That's great. So, understanding or getting to evolve through these challenges and problems, what are you looking forward to achieve? So you'll be able to make sure that the next generation of people wouldn't have to go through what you went to do what you are trying to do.
Absolutely. I think this is a great question. I think I always want to be a lawyer. I'm always, want to become an international legal and lawyer and, working on international issues and like conflict resolutions. This is a huge field in international policy right now. And I think striving, because I feel like right now in the global political landscape, it's so rapidly changing. You got politicians and performative politics, whether on issues of climate change, sustainability, housing, and all the issues that matters to the world. And I want to kind of bring back the cooperative, like the rule-based international legal order, whether it's on defense and whether it's on issues like climate change. It's kind of like the idea of alliances and strong leadership. And most importantly, on an international level, the corporation, the cooperative effort and network that all people from different societies are able to come together and bring the kind of grassroots power and grassroots connection into the collective action. But on the domestic level, people need to understand, also young people, younger generation need to understand that every vote matters. Your vote matters to the leader that you pick, the policy. There's always one question I love to ask when someone said, I want to vote for this person, I believe in this partisan politics, I always ask, what is the policy? Why do you like this politician? Why do you want to vote for him? Is it because the policy that you believe in? Is it because the community, the writing that you live in, this leader have a tremendous impact on, improving the writing in the community? What exactly is the reason? And I think kind of this reasoning, this kind of rational reasoning is largely missing in the sea of emotion and irrational and this populistic narratives that we're bringing into political fields right now. And it matters so much with economic development. We're seeing the current curves going on. We're seeing the fear of missing out in the investment fields and all the human rights violation happening around the world because of conflicts and just so much happening at the moment.
That's great. It's good to have the kind of insight and then what you want to do and how you even want to do it. So as an entrepreneur and a diplomat trainee, how do you see the impact of diplomacy on entrepreneurship? How is it affecting you personally and professionally? And how are you looking forward to use diplomacy to support other entrepreneurs who are trying to do cross-border trades or are trying to expand their business, maybe from Taiwan or from other people, from other countries to North America, maybe any other place?
Absolutely. There's actually a conference happening. It's called the Entrepreneur 20. So it's the Malaysian under the G20. So the idea of the conference is bring all the entrepreneurs from around the world, especially the G20 countries, coming together and share trade resources, commerce, and all the ideas in startup, especially in technological advancement, AI, all of these are without boundaries. So a lot of these kind of regulations, innovations, and ethical problems requires all of us to come together and exchange the ideas. Personally, I'm from Taiwan, and as we know, Taiwan is a huge semiconductor industry who relies on specializations, and how Taiwan, the newest batch of investors and innovators are bringing in the start of the new energy into the global stage, and how we're working with other countries. So I think this conversation is important, and it intrinsically is diplomat itself, because you are representing the country that you're in, and you are also getting all the resources and help from your government, from your community. The founder of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, and he always said something that he always appreciate his roots, as a Taiwanese, even though he founded his company in the U.S., one of the biggest company, NVIDIA's, when he first started, he wasn't able to get any help in the United States with investors. And the first manufacturer he went to is small manufacturer in Taiwan. And that's the first manufacturer that he contacted. So I think this kind of idea of a network, kind of everyone coming together and able to provoke the conversation of what is missing, what is happening in your country. Personally, I am currently working on a home battery project called Alpha Technology. And we're a proudly Canadian company. All of our home batteries are made in Canada, and all of our founders are all Canadians, because we want to comply with the Canadians' role in zero carbon emission decarbonizations in 2030 and 2050 and Paris Agreement. And this is also a form of diplomacy as well, knowing the countries and the country's role and responsibility in the global stage, and us, an entrepreneur, able to step in using our knowledge in business, marketing, our knowledge on the technical side to bring in this economic power, increase employment, bring more job opportunities to Canada or anywhere around the world, and boost the kind of economical exchange.
Okay. So, Nicole, I want you to, in your own understanding, your own way, I want you to define greatness. What you think greatness is, and is it something that's really important to you? Is it something that you want to become? What do you think about that's what greatness?
Absolutely. And I think defining greatness is also remembering the roots that we come from and what your background could represent. I think as a woman myself, being framed and shaped by the normative restrictions as a woman in politics and a woman in entrepreneur space, I think it's important to bring kind of this narrative that has been long in our community back to this what we call the norms. Say, for example, in the world we have this, how we tackle climate change and kind of the human-centric perspective in the Anthropocene. Oftentimes we have this kind of presumed way of doing things that is not being largely inclusive of the global south, or the country that I'm from, Taiwan. And I want to bring back this kind of perspective, the BIPOC futurism, the resources and network and the potential that we can provide to places like Canada, the transatlantic world. And I think that the idea of greatness is not only being able to stand on the stage or serve as an international lawyer in ICC, ICJ, or speaking at a world famous organization or conference, but the idea of the presence, being hold a Taiwanese passport, standing at a United Nations conference, although I'm representing the Canadian platform, but also speak for my people. And, being the presence means a lot more than the reputation, the temptation around the lucrative business and the benefits that brings in the political circle. And I think that circled back to the temptations, the extreme ideologies and narratives that have been circling around that makes up to this uncertainties, and how do we stand still and strike a balance between both sides and the presence, the significance of the presence. That is how I define greatness as a woman in a male-dominated field, as a BIPOC communities, as a person from Taiwan speaking for my people, but also speaking for Canadians, because Canadians are able to give me these platforms and speak on the global stage.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So, is there any one person who inspires you?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, multiple people. I mean, not only one person. Emma Clooney, she's a very famous international lawyer, and she represents, clients from Ukraine and many clients in post-conflicts and in conflict societies, and herself as a woman as well, being able to stand on the stage and battle against this kind of male-dominated and almost just kind of, can also think of masculine, military defense-related alliances, and I think someone that I would look up to, and something that I want to be in the future, but as well as the community that stands up for me. There's a lot of my friends in a Toronto Global Shapers community. There are people in grassroots community building community for Toronto kids. There are a few of my friends in NATO Canada, working towards the defense alliances in Arctic and Indo-Pacific with our new European allies as well. So there are so many exciting things going on in community, and that kind of is something that keeps me motivated and keeps me forward.
Sure. So I have an interesting question. In your presentations, in most of the things you've said, I have highlighted a few stuff where you hit on a woman in a male-dominated like ecosystem. Of course, I don't know so much about that. And then I'm so proud that you love the idea of representing women and then making sure that women voices are heard. Now I have a question. You're a feminist, right? I am also a masculinist. So it's funny, but do you think that the idea of feminism is overrated? I'm asking that because currently I feel like the world is giving opportunities to so many people so long as they persist. Like as a Black person coming to Canada, there are certain opportunities that when I approach at first, I wouldn't get to have it. But maybe eventually I'm gonna get into it. Do you think people intentionally do that to as against maybe minority groups, or you think it's just the way the world operates, where people have to really work to get what they want? I hope you understand.
Yes.
Not just with the perspective of someone being a feminist, but someone coming from a minority right standpoint. Is it that is how things are, or you think that people intentionally suppress people in a from like a minority standpoint?
Absolutely. So I love to talk about 2 points. What you mentioned is it reminds me of a very interesting called the 14th Amendment in an American constitutional case. And the debate is around whether we should go colorblind or should we label people as color. So the idea here is most of the cases surrounds like admission. So say, for example, in an admission, you will tag whether you're part of the Black community or Asian community, and this kind of generalize people in a specific circle as you're part of the BIPOC communities. And the rationale behind this is what we usually hear the DEI hire. So we want to reserve several seats for these communities, but there's also people from several communities feels like they're underrepresented, and there are some communities are more quote unquote privileged in this whole system. But if we're looking back to a general, we call it systematical bias, is systematical inequality. Say, for example, in the AI, there's a very interesting documentary called Coded Bias. It's a documentary by Netflix. It's a series in 2020. And it talks about how this kind of systematic biases that is entrenched into our system, whether it's the way institution is set up. very English-based. We have the parliament, we have the executive order, we have all these institutions that is being settled down by earlier European settlers in the indigenous communities. And how we see classic liberalism, how we see property is completely different from, say, for example, some of the indigenous or some of the BIPOC communities. It's completely different. And we have been living in this kind of systematical institution for so long that we didn't have the chance to rethink and evaluate these kind of biases because we have normalized these. Okay. So the idea of DEI and this opportunities reserved for these people is to able to allow different perspectives to be incorporated in these communities. Obviously, there are arguments on, say, for example, there's a very famous word called 女权自助餐 in Mandarin. So it basically means people taking advantage because of their identity and they're not working hard and because they aren't. But I think in general, I think it's interesting to kind of looking back in a different way and see there are always biases. Default is never neutral, and there's always bias in between. And that is why we need such sort of diversity. We're not tokenizing these diversities, but kind of using this kind of physical opportunities to get everyone involved in this conversation on equal levels.
That's really impressive. Because I've had a couple of conversations with a number of women where anytime we talk about feminism, they take it very personal instead of taking it very professional. Because once you take it very personal, you do it so wrong. You understand? When you take it too personal, then it confirms what you mentioned, that a privilege being given to someone who probably may not be working hard. You understand? But professionally, I think that you said default wouldn't always be right. And I think that something I agree with. And it's impressive that you bring my mind to this stuff. That's great. So let's get to it. The Clever Summit, where you'll be speaking virtually, right? So you're going to talk about how diplomacy impacts entrepreneurship, particularly in the world which looks smaller, where anyone can sell anything, anywhere, yet restricted by policies, conflicts, wars. How do you envision that diplomacy would impact entrepreneurship, and to what extent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is such a great opportunity to talk about, especially we're currently in an extreme trade war and, panic everywhere, seeing people want to buy in and buy out in the stock market. And we're in a very decentralized world where you can sell something on eBay, you can sell something on Amazon, and all the media also very decentralized. There are so many content creators earning money from these platforms. And, once this kind of political climate change, it could significantly affect whether it's on tariff, on economic development, or even, say, for example, Instagram policy. When these narratives are being decided by big corporate, big tech companies, they're able to shift the dimension, shift the conversation based on what engagement they want. So it affects every single bit of it. And I think this is how I want to talk about is the idea of how, small entrepreneurs like ourselves, me representing the Taiwan community, but also working on sustainability and alternative energy, because Canada is such a huge energy export country. And how do we maximize such utilities and chances and really leverage the Canadians' role in the global society? And you as well, you talked about you want to get into the U.S. market and in the business place, but you also encounter these kind of problems, whether it's through the borders or how do I register a company, because they're also largely limiting the registrations of, by foreign owners. Yes. So these are all the conversations that we want to tackle right now. And I think it's important to bring in that kind of diplomacy, this kind of government, and how these political climate impact us entrepreneurs, and how us entrepreneurs can, leverage our diplomacy and working on with our allies, such as the European allies that Canadians are currently working with right now. These are also very great conversation topics that we can bring about in the Clean Summit. Yeah.
Sure, that's awesome. So we're going to wrap up, and then I want you to give me a piece of advice, and then give everyone else who's listening a piece of advice as to what or why people shouldn't stop at anything they want to do, and why they should find a strong reason to want to achieve something. If you look at your experience, definitely it hasn't been an easy goal, but you've been able to come this far, and this is not even where you want to get to yet, right? So what piece of advice do you have for anybody that's listening, including myself?
Absolutely. I think two things is, first of all, and I was being told, just do it. We all have our media.
Just do it, like
everything.
Nike.
Nike, yeah, just do it. We have our phones, we have all these medias and resources around. Everything is just one click away. Not everyone have to change the world. Not everyone have to change the community. But you can start by, say, for example, just to vote. To vote for a stronger leadership. You can start by looking at your community. What is happening in your community? Homelessness, food banks, and waste, and all these small little problems that that might strike your interest, because every single thing happening around the world matters. And that's why civic duty is so important, and just do it. And the second one is always keep authentic, keep it genuine, and always remember the root. And the root is not only where you come from in the background, but also why did you start doing it? That's always things that keep me forward, especially in places of politics. Sometimes you get lost in all the temptations, you get lost in different extreme ideology. Sometimes there are tough times tackling these attacks, especially as a woman in these fields. So always remember the roots, keep it authentic, keep it real.
That's really amazing. That's really amazing. It's been great getting to sit down with you finally and talking about yourself, what you do, and why you're doing it. Is there any book you think you've read that has impacted your life that you want, you think people should read before we close this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a famous book, since I'm a little feminism myself, and I am a huge advocate
I'm also
for.
a feminist.
Yeah,
Feminist.
I'm a huge woman and politics advocate, and it's myself in its presence. I have a favorite book. I think it's called the Monster and Whore. So this is there's another name I can't remember. But this is like a book that describe, how woman is being typically perceived as a mother, monster, and whore in these fields. And this gives us like a normative and general look on how, woman is being perceived in these spaces. And look at our female leaders as well. Taiwan, we had a female leader, a female president before. We're looking at the uprising, Mexico. Shaban, she's also a female president. How female leadership can be perceived in this political space, as well as bring in new norms in peace and security, peace building, and defense, and also your mothers, and how you have mother, you have sisters, you have all these family members for a woman. How can we uplift, as men as well? Can we create an inclusive and inviting space for women in these industries? So yeah, that's my favorite book, Mother, Monsters, and Whores.
That's great. Really nice to talk to you. Really been a great moment. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right.
And I'll see you guys next time.
All right,
See you.
so-
Bye-bye.